Hi everyone, it's Manda here. Welcome to Yachting International Radio, and you're on Inspirations with Manda J. And today I'm really excited to introduce you to one of my friends and colleagues from MSOS, the amazing medical trainer, firefighter, paramedic, all-round adventure man, John. And welcome to the show. But how about you introduce yourself? Who are you? What makes you such a great medical trainer?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I have no idea. No, I'm John Heiser, and I am here in Florida. Excuse me. I'm here in Florida, in South Florida, actually, on Hutchinson Island. And I teach wherever they send me. I have been with the city of Fort Lauderdale for 21 years, working on the busiest truck that we have and running calls nonstop. We work 24-hour shifts. We have 2 days off. And in that 24 hours, we'll usually run 20 to 25 calls, and both a mix of fire and medical, everything from railroads to freeways to airports to the ocean, obviously in Fort Lauderdale. So I've been doing that. And then I got involved with teaching early in my career, because when I got into the paramedic program, it was kind of easy for me. I hate to say that, but I had, because when I would study, I would break everything down into what I call crayon format. In other words, I would have to draw stuff out with crayons. Like when we were talking about cells and pathology, I would draw it big with crayons and I'd be like, oh, look, I understand it. But then I'd share it with the people sitting next to me. They'd be like, they would understand it. And as we progressed, I just realized that teaching to human beings of just, hey, explain this in a way that people can understand. And when they understand it, you see that light goes up, they go, I finally get this. That was a great part. So I started that at the college down here, teaching paramedic program, teaching nurses, and some doctor classes, and got involved with advanced trauma life support. And then it just started to fall into place where different courses I get to teach, to travel the country. Advanced difficult airway was a course that I absolutely loved. I really got involved in the airway routine for a long time. Actually, is a technique that I've been working on a long time for cricothyrotomies, that I've taught our younger guys, how to do. And one of my direct medics that works in my station, just, I hate saying it, got his fifth cric. It was on a trauma call the other day, and he only does the technique that we taught him, and we worked all 5 times without any problems. So that's how I got into teaching. And there's a whole lot of other, just like all of us, where you teach all the little classes and learn all different things. But whenever I teach, I always say, everything I tell you, I learned from somebody else. I'm just sharing you stuff that people a lot smarter than me have showed me. And now it's just my job to pass it on to you.
I love that. So you've been teaching, obviously, nurses and doctors and paramedics, and now the yacht crew. Well, for many years, the super yacht crew and all the guys in the maritime industry. So what would you say the difference is you find between teaching nurses and doctors how to be more adventurous, and how to get airways in and how to do advanced life support, compared to teaching mariners and super yacht crew how to be doctors? What do you find the differences are, and what lights you up about teaching the yachties?
I actually explained this in the beginning of the course. The way I got into this, and I didn't go out looking for this. I wasn't looking for any more teaching to do. I was actually kind of saying, let me back off a little bit. Well, Becky down here came, and I was teaching a on land shipboard firefighting class. So in other words, when the ship's on dry dock, and there's a fire, how do you fight it? Because our crews weren't used to that. They're used to building in house fires. So when they would go in, you'd get too much water in you would lose the whole thing, would fall off the jacks. And so we had to get into that a little bit. Well, Becky came up and said, can you teach a CPR class for me? And I was like, oh no, I'm backing out. And then finally she was persistent enough that I did it. So I did a CPR class for her and a first aid class. And when I got on the vessel, everybody wanted to hear what I had to say. Like, they were interested. Not like, I hate to say it, but paramedics, where, I'm teaching people where they either heard it before or go, yeah, okay, here we go, another 8-hour class of Heiser talking. But they really wanted to know more, and their thirst for knowledge was just, and their attention was amazing. And this went on to where I finally got involved a lot more with MSOS. And she said, this is the right program. This is the way to do it. The customization, the ability to actually stay in touch with people when they have issues, and have the crews contact me on my phone, just saying, hey, listen, I have a cousin that's this. What do you think? And I can call a doctor and say, Doc, what do you think? And it could be just something as, my dad's not feeling good. Hey, you need to go seek some help with this. It's that's how I got more involved. And with what do I think about teaching with them? I just, their energy gives me energy. Their wanting to know more makes me learn more. There's not a class that I think I go into where I just haven't researched something fresh before going on board. Whether it's just something that I've seen 1,000 times that I just didn't remember, or we were doing I was doing a course down in Costa Rica, and somebody was asking about New Caledonia, and I think it was the snakes we were talking about. I'm sitting there going, that's not my specialty, but I will find out. I actually spent all night looking up snakes in the area and different ways and different antivenoms we would need, how we would get it there, and it's fascinating. I think I hate to say I enjoy more than the cruise, because I try not to make it that way, but I do. I really love doing this. So that's how we shifted over. When you say, when you and I, we talk about, getting back to the first aid, but I think you're right. It's more of an adventure medicine where they're not going to have all the supplies that I have right here in, the city of Fort Lauderdale. And to think, all of a sudden, this is what I need to do, and then bring it back and say, what are my next steps? That's the exciting part about teaching this class. So it's as I said, I think we probably do feed off their energy, and that keeps us moving forward and learning more.
Yeah, I totally agree. What blows my mind working with the yacht crews is just how coachable they are. I find it so easy. I find it easier, no offense to my nursing and doctor students that are listening right now, but I find teaching yachty something like cannulation so easy, so much easier and quicker than teaching medical professionals that, maybe, look at things different ways. I find all the hands-on things really fun. So let's talk about some of the gnarly things you've done. So you've been you've been a firefighter and a paramedic. What would be could you tell us one of your gnarliest experiences?
Well, that's probably the most common question. There's a lot, and I always joke around after the years of doing it. And I know there's a lot of people that have done a lot more than I have and longer than I have. But a lot of them, you don't remember a lot of them. So I'll be either sitting in a class, or actually that's when it happens most. I'll be sitting in a class, listening to someone else teach and watching their style, or coaching or mentoring or learning. And when I'm doing that, they'll always say, remember that call that we had? And I'll just sit there and go, no, I wasn't on that. And they're like, yes, you were. You taught me how to do this. And they're all excited because they're like, this is what you taught me. And I'll always do it this way. And I'm sitting there going, I don't remember that call. So the most gnarliest, there's one call that sticks out. Of course, children always, we always want to protect them, but they always stick out. And I always make sure that I talk about those calls so I can, debrief after them and get them, but they stay with you. I had, this was a long time ago, a lady fall off the back of a motorcycle doing about 90 miles an hour on a freeway. And then she was hit a couple times. And so when we got there, we had to do whatever treatment just to follow the protocols. And that was one that it was early in my career. So I remember, sitting there going, oh my God. The most fascinating call was as a flight medic. It was, I was trying so hard to become a flight medic, an international flight medic. And I kind of couldn't get my foot in the door. And I finally did. They gave me 2 BLS flights to do. And apparently they liked the way I was doing it. So the third time they gave me an advanced life support one where we were on the flight and I was with a nurse, and we had to do a needle decompression flying out of San Antonio. I think we were about 6,000 feet, but the cabin pressure would only go to 8,000. And so we did the needle decompression on the plane and drained the blood out into an IV bag. And I remember the nurse had never seen it before. And I remember the nurse going, that's so cool. And for me, doing that up on a plane, which is the first time I've ever done on a plane, and everything went very successful. We ended up returning, landing back, and we went and drained out about 500 cc's of fluid from his lung prior to returning the flight. That was probably one of the moments where I had that epiphany of saying, listen, you need to know all of this inside and out and be ready to do it at any time. There's no one else that's going to come in and do this for you. There's not going to be someone else that said, oh, I know how to do that, I'll do that. And that was kind of how it got me charged up. But lastly, and there was a flight that came out of Barbados, and it was a commercial flight. And it was one of those flights where I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to Barbados to where we're going. And then when we got there, the guy was a lot more sick than I thought. And that whole flight, we made the jumps to customs that we had to. And during the flight, he really decompensated, excuse me. And we got him home, and the family was just so gracious. And they sent the most lovely letter I've ever seen. I still have it to this day, and I still read it to this day because it motivates me to help others all the time and see what repercussions that you have with family. He ended up dying 3 days after we got him home, and that's all he wanted to do was get home. So there's a bunch of little information. The gnarliest call, as I said, there's a lot of them, but after a while, what I always tell our crews is, when shootings and stabbings come in anymore, when we were first starting, we're like, oh, we're shooting. Now it's like, okay, let's go to the shooting and get this done. So there's a lot of interesting stuff, fascinating stuff. But
it totally does. And then building on from that, so when we apply your past experiences and your knowledge of all the products that we put in the medical kits, I'm sure if you're anything like me, when I first started looking at marine medical kits, coming from being paramedicine and emergency nursing, and seeing what we have in there. And I say to the students all the time, the gear we're teaching you, even at something as simple as an oral airway, it took me 3 years at university, and then a year of, doing an airway medicine, as a grad dip, to be able to just pass the, anesthetist, the Goodell or the oral airway. And, so I always want to emphasize to the students, the technology that they have in their hands. What would be your favorite products that you get really excited about that we get to show people and that we get to put in the medical kits for the yachties?
Isn't that the truth? You do have your favorites. There's always parts of the course where I'm always like, okay, I got to show you this. My passion is, and I hate saying this because it's kind of cliche, is the CPR part. And I always get into the CPR about doing it correctly, because I had the opportunity to do it on my father twice and brought him back 100%. And it worked. And I had somebody else that wasn't doing it correctly that I actually pushed them off the chest and started doing it and said, hey, if you're not going to do this right, don't do it. He came back 100% neuro-capable. Everything was back. I mean, we were sitting at the kitchen table months later, just sitting there having breakfast. So during the courses, I always really explain those stories in CPR, why this is so important. And I think that kind of makes it a little more personal. Tourniquets are something that I've used frequently. And when we talk about using them, everyone's still at the point where oh, no, shy away from tourniquets. And I really getting into and explaining, trying to get the belief that, hey, this isn't, the worst thing in the world. And explaining to them how they get to do it, and demonstrating them. And I always have a couple different types of tourniquets I demonstrate and show how they work. And they realize that, oh, listen, we don't always need to lose the extremity or someone's going to die if we put this on. This is just a means of getting to the next point. So that's one of them. As you said, cannulation is always, people love, when you get needles out, they just get so excited. So that's always, EpiPens are another one. They look at EpiPens, they're like, I never knew how this worked. So that part of the class, when I first started, the bags were overwhelming, and I told myself to remember that. So when I get on some of the vessels and I, make everyone grab the bags, we usually open with a really brief, easy scenario just to kind of loosen up a little bit. And when they grab the bags, I let them know, I understand these bags are overwhelming because I was there. But let's try to just break them down into steps. And the teamwork, we can do this together. So as I progress through learning how to teach this, every time I think teamwork comes down to the biggest part of it. And then you start seeing them work as a team and being able to make the call for telemedicine, and you see someone become the team leader and someone else gets to answer the questions right, and they understand, oh, this is what vital signs mean. Which I during the course, when you talk about vital signs, people want to know about their own, and people will be like, well, I have this. And then you see them start taking their own. And I'm like, that involvement is great. So my favorite part, needles always, because that gets everybody interested. But I'd have to say tourniquets are one of the parts where we're talking about care. The part that I think that I really need to focus on more is probably just your basic wound dressings. Because I always feel like this is stuff that people have seen so much that, after a while, they're like, okay, I get it. And I try to explain that this is common sense that you've done before, just how to do it, and you can redo it and when you're going to redo it. So I wish I focused on that a little bit more. And that's something that whenever I'm packing my bags for the class, I'm always like, remember, during this class, work just to spend an extra couple minutes on doing the dressings correctly. The scenario part, sorry.
Yeah, I get that. Like when I started my first medical company for the boats, I was an emergency nurse, had been for 20 years. And then I went to do the dressings and I was like, oh, what do we, in emergency, we stitch you up, or you have a burn, or you graze, or a carpet burn, or a bee sting. It doesn't matter. We've got limited resources and a limited budget. So it's gauze and a bandage. And so when it came to actually choosing products that, you normally only get in the private sector, or, if you're actually studying and part of wound management and care. And when I started learning about wound care and all the different dressings, there's so much to learn. And I think that's something I'd like to learn a lot more about, and so fascinating too, especially when, it seems that no matter what research they do, still soapy water is just as good as betadine or chlorhexidine or anything else. And I just, I don't know, I find that quite grounding and nearly bizarre that we haven't found anything better, but it's good to know that we've got it. And then I want to add another layer on that's going to probably keep you awake tonight while you're traveling to San Diego is, the wound dressings are all well and good, but how do you apply them in the tropics? And is the wet Gelinet, or paraffin gauze dressing that you would normally use in a cooler climate gonna work, if it's too hot and moist all the time? I find that part of dressings, where our crew are wearing them and around the equator, they mightn't have the same purpose. If that dressing's at 50 degrees the whole time and all moist, then it would in, say, England or Southampton or something.
Funny you say that, because that's part of what I struggle with, that when during the teachings, saying, everyone wants to know wet or dry dressings, and about the redressings, and and sitting there going, God, there's so many different situations and locations. When I was in Alaska doing a course up there, I was doing a Northwest Passage. I really had to do a lot more research on dressings like that and say, okay, this is going to be different. And I actually spent about 3 weeks just putting together a course that was relative to the passage. So yeah, I agree with you.
Oh, I want to do that course. So
Right.
I've got another juicy question. What are your thoughts on bone guns? You've obviously been a paramedic, had a fair bit of experience with the bone guns. How do you feel about them being in the kits, and do they excite you?
Oh, God, I'm always careful with what I say, only because, I love them. I absolutely love them. I think it's a must-have, because of teaching IV cannulation is great and exciting. But I understand that, being a captain on where I work, I don't do cannulation all the time. And sometimes I'll come in, I'll be like, ooh, been a while. Maybe I should let the guy that does this 6 times a day get this one. Or the guy that works in the pediatric ER on his days off. So the bone gun I like a lot, because in the situation, that we're going to use it, it works, and it's simple. So that's why I like it.
Yeah.
So that's I do. I love it. I actually packed it last night, and the reusable one, testing one. And then I have a real one that we take it apart so we can show the springs on the inside and how it works, and then a couple videos, and everybody gets excited about that part of the course too. And then everybody goes, "Ooh, I don't want that done on me." And I said, "Well, you're not going to be sitting there going, 'Don't do that.' Trust me, you're either going to be fairly conscious or unconscious, and it's not going to be something where you go, 'Oh, okay, yeah, that didn't hurt.'" So I like them. How do you feel about them?
I love them. I get so excited about them. I actually want to make a video of doing it on myself, or you when we catch up next.
We'll work on that.
Because I want to be able to use our videos that are us, not some guy in an army vest, like that rambling on. They're brilliant
videos.
So many lives have been saved because of them, and I get really excited about seeing how nervous people are with them when we first start talking. And then the more we get used to it, them coming around to think, wow, like I could really save a life this way, because we all know how hard it is to get an IV in someone that's shut down and hypothermic, then put them in the Southern Ocean as well. And we're going to be struggling, so, having that technology, that's what really excites me about these kids, because once again, there's a lot of hospital and acute care settings that don't have the budget for such I was going to say toys, but very useful bits of medical equipment that save lives.
Well, I always call our stuff toys. I agree with you. I think that I agree with you. In our kids do have that stuff, and I think as the teaching progresses, working on that team thing that we work on, making sure, going back to that crayon approach, and that's kind of why I like our stuff, is because it does turn into that. Okay, here's the emergency right in front of you. Here's the first 10 minutes. Okay, and then here's the next 45 minutes, or next 45 minutes, next 50 minutes. So getting that 10 minutes out of the way, and then saying, okay, what's the care going to be? Bringing in something like the bone injection gun, they can do. It's not impossible. Or IV cannulation in someone with that's depleted or hypovolemic, or somebody who's just dehydrated, and you can't find the veins. And so I'm with you on that one. Yes.
And what you're obviously a bit of a product geek like myself. So what excites you about the future of marine medicine? What do you think we're going to be seeing more of in our kits in terms of supplies and medical technology?
Oh God, I do this all the time on the vessels, because everybody wants to know this while we're teaching. Now, what do we need? And I always do that. Listen, I'm going to email you a list of stuff that we might not be in there, but we do supply if you're interested in it. And the SAR stretcher is something I just love to use because of the flexibility of it and the ability to get through some of these stairwells, which, I always tell them, listen, if a crew comes on board here in the States, they don't understand how to get around your vessel, and they don't understand how hard it's going to be to get someone out. And I only know this because I'm on them all the time, both in the Marine team and with MSOS. So that SAR stretcher is great. Telemedicine, my wife and I have talked about this because she's been involved with it in optical care. Telemedicine is not just the way of the future. It has to be the progression that we need to really embrace. And I don't think, not us as MSOS, but I don't think the world enough is embracing telemedicine. It's an excellent opportunity for us to have someone right in front of you, where a lot of times, you have that initial first aid care, and then it's the now what? And that's what most of our people are worried about. Now what? And then we say, well, we're a phone call away. You can show the pictures, you can have the video. And I really believe that being able to transmit the information back and forth, and the Themis unit, which we were talking about, was 12 lead capability. I was like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic, because someone on the other end can sit there and say, okay, I'm seeing a little bit better of a picture. The crayons, you're drawing a picture for the doctor on the other end. So I really think, and I hate to be cliche with it, but telemedicine, both in MSOS, as paramedics in the field, everywhere we go, at home during this pandemic, we've noticed that I haven't seen a doctor in a year now, but I met with them twice online. And I find that actually our online meetings there's been more interaction. And so I just think telemedicine number one. Toys wise, we would talk. I was lately where the area, South Florida in general, nasal Narcan has just gone out of control here. And it's not something that we deal with on the vessels as much. But I always say, listen, it's always good to have a just in case. And medicine's going up the nose using the mucosal device is something that I'm hot on right now. It's simple. We don't have to deal with needles. The absorption rate is fantastic. Drawbacks, not every medicine can go that way. And, maybe 1 milliliter up each nostril. But it's effective. And I'm seeing that in the field with nasal Narcan. So anytime that would be probably my toy, the mucosal atomizing device or something similar to that.
You got me excited. That's what's going to keep me awake tonight, is researching that. I haven't really looked into it, to be honest.
We are both geeks. You're going to be home today looking up all this stuff, going, what's going to
So good. Just had an idea. I think we should start a regular show where we do product updates and we talk about our favorite products and do mini trainings. Do you want to do that sometime?
I love that.
Regularly.
And why I love that is because like you, and I have to go back and say this, the courses that I teach all over this side of the continent, I always get, oh, do you know Manda? Oh, and then they'll tell me something that you taught. And I'll be like, oh, one is I didn't know that. Or two is we're teaching exactly alike. And that's exciting because that's experience, not teaching, but doing. And I think that as we teach, we always say, listen, I'm not teaching you the manual. I'm teaching you how this actually works and what's going to work and what's not going to work. So if we do this product thing, we can actually show, hey, this works. A lot of stuff that I was initially taught was not true. When I'm sitting there going, I hate to talk advanced, but this patient's in 3rd degree block. I was told it's a cardiac rhythm. I was told they were going to die. And then I see it. And I remember the first time I saw it, the guy was cleaning his house and he's like, no, I don't think I want to go to the hospital. I'm like, my instructor told me you were going to die. And he was fine the whole way. And the next 2 times I saw it, there was the same thing. And I said, you really need to look into some of this stuff and know those little secrets that make you successful for patient care. So I would love to do that. That's a long answer to your short question.
Let's do it. And I'd just like to add that when John and I are training, we both work strictly within the guidelines that Dr. Spike Briggs sets for us in accordance with the MSOS curriculum.
That always comes up too. I always say, listen, I'm going to tell you, this was my experience here. These are the guidelines. And I have to do that down here a lot with, we have our local protocols that we have to follow. And I always say, nobody fits into these boxes that we draw. So sometimes you have to figure out how are we going to direct them and get someone to go in that direction. So when you are dealing with someone that got, bit by some animal that you've never seen before, how do we get them back into the box, from out here? And so, yes, we definitely follow all the guidelines, but we actually know how to get into those guidelines sometimes. I think that's a great way to put it.
Absolutely. And I love what you say about being outside the box because, in summary, really, we're dealing with all the crew and owners and guests that we deal with are all people that like living outside the box. So, and that are always far, if the box is, a stable hospital with an ambulance, and then we're far from that box. We're millions of miles from that box, or 3 weeks sailing from that box as well. So I think that's what really makes our job so exciting is playing around outside the box.
I agree with you. And it is that everywhere we go, I'm always like, you're doing what? Or you guys are going where? And I'm like, okay, well, we let's talk about that. Because that's not in this diagram right here. So getting back into the box, that's a whole nother class in itself.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, and we're going to do this again because it's been so much fun. So everyone, keep an eye out for John and Manda's product reviews, where we're going to get really geeky and show you some really cool stuff that you probably have in your kits and don't know about, or that, you know, is going to be coming into the kits in the near future as well. So it's been really such an honor to have you on the show, and you're such a legend.
Amanda, you are the legend, and it's the honor truly is mine. I've been looking forward to this because, as I said, your name's mentioned every time I go somewhere. They're like, you know, Amanda, and I always say, Amanda the Great, yes, because the stuff that you teach, I'm learning from you. So when this is over, we will spend some time together and definitely go over a lot of stuff, and let's do the product review. So thank you for the time, and this was amazing. I didn't when you asked me initially, I was so flattered, so thank you.
Well, we're going to be regular, so it's fantastic. Have a great trip to San Diego today. Enjoy your beautiful garden, and I hope you get some time to get out on the water in your own boat. And thanks for everything you do. You bring so much value to yachting and the world. It's really cool.
Amanda, be safe, okay?
Take care. Thanks, everyone. You're listening to Yachting International Radio, and you've been on Inspirations with Manda J. And we'll be back next Monday. See you soon.